Chief Operating Officer at TPF Software, Mr. Giri Ramamoorthy.
I learned that ethical leadership is about observing, capturing, and fixing those deviances.
The way you unpack the human side of integration, the tensions, the turning points, and the breakthroughs gave such a clear picture of what really happens behind closed doors.
Some of the most demanding and transformative parts of technology landscape, I should say.
Hey everyone, welcome back to FaceTime with Leaders, powered by Directors Institute, World Council of Directors. I'm your host, Sunny Pancholi, and today we have got someone who is truly revolutionizing the technology landscape with a career that spans over 30 years and continues to shape industries in ways that most of us can only imagine. Today's guest is a powerhouse, Mr. Giri Ramamoorthy, the Chief Operating Officer at TPF Software, and a leader who has been at the heart of some of the most transformative digital initiatives of our time. From sharing product strategy and operational excellence to leading complex M&A integrations, Mr. Giri has not just shaped the future of tech companies, he has literally redefined how technology drives business growth and operational success. Whether it's transforming legacy systems into agile, cloud-powered models, or overseeing some of the most strategic acquisitions in the tech and financial sectors, Mr. Giri is all about building scalable, efficient, and high-performing organizations. His expertise is vast, from enterprise architecture to digital business transformation, and his leadership philosophy is rooted in creating lasting value, not just short-term success. So, Mr. Giri, it's such a pleasure to have you with us today. How are you doing today?
Very good, very good. Thank you, Sunny. Thank you so much, Sunny. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for that incredibly generous introduction. Though I have to admit, every time when someone says 30 plus years of experience, I suddenly feel a lot old. But yes, it's been quite a journey. It's a journey with ups and downs and a lot of learnings and so on. You know, Sunny, when I look back at my journey, it's been 3 decades of solving problems, building teams, and trying to make technology feel less intimidating for businesses. But what I have come to appreciate the most aspect of it is that leadership is not about systems we build. It's about the people we grow and the trust we create and the values we protect. Technology changes every few years, and the principles and integrity are the permanent fixtures. That should be the base or the foundation, I should say. And what really keeps me excited even now is how industry is evolving now. It's reinventing itself. Cloud, AI, automation, cybersecurity. The pace is just unbelievable. When we talk about leadership now, it's not about keeping up pace with the technology. It's about keeping people inspired, aligned, and protect through that change, right? So I'm really glad and excited to be here, Sunny. Looking forward to have a very simple, honest, and grounded conversation with you. And hopefully I would be able to share some stories and lessons and few scars, what I have experienced throughout my journey. That might resonate with the audience as well. So thanks once again for having me, Sunny.
Wonderful to hear that, Mr. Giri. And once again, welcome to the show. And we are excited to dive into your incredible journey. So let's get started by exploring what's at the heart of your leadership. You have had an impressive career in the tech world, but I would love to hear your story. Can you share a little about how your career started and what led you to the role you are in today?
Sure, Sunny. Of course. See, this question always brings a smile in me because, it's always not a straight line. My journey is not a straight line. I didn't start in a big office or a fancy internships, I should say. It actually began in a very small and mid-90s. We as a curious little assembly programmer who wanted to crack open the systems and writing some data recovery tools and data protection tools. The role model was Peter Norton, who was a legendary systems programmer. I'm a big fan of him, of course. We wanted to emulate most of my friends and me. We wanted to emulate him, and we wanted to create something. So we were actually trying to write a hard drive data lock utility, which actually runs on BIOS, right? It's more at the assembler level, at the EEPROM level. There were no Googles at that time, no Stack Overflows, no AIs to guide people. It is all pure curiosity and your learning and your trial and error methods. That's how we learn. And after a lot of days and nights, long nights and a lot of failures, and suddenly the program started working, and I managed to write that complete utility. That is the moment of truth for me. That brought the confidence in me, in a young, budding, system programmer. So that's when I realized something like, you have to stay curious, and technology will reward you, right? You will have a career progression. So from that day onwards, I always was curious and stayed curious with whatever I was trying to do. And then the real awakening moment, or the wake up moment, the turning point happened, Sunny. It happened somewhere in Mumbai, where I started working a year later, maybe, when I worked for Ocean Freight Logistics in Mumbai, where I wrote a communication program to send the communication EDI files to the ships, and also to fax to the customers. There was some issue with that program, and I still remember the day very clearly. Or the marketing team and the customer relation team, they were just calling me, and they said the customers are so angry because they are getting the faxes continuously. There is some bug, and it is sending the same faxes in a loop. So they had to switch off the fax machines, and they are asking us to fix it. And now the whole business was on fire. Here is a junior guy like me. I wrote the program, but there is a bug in it, and I had to fix it. So I managed to fix it. I managed to stay calm and fix it that day, but it gave me the biggest learning of my life. Technology is not just about writing code or showing your intelligence, showing your smartness. It's about people. It's about the impact on people, right? It's someone's reputation on the line. There are businesses running on your software. So you have to see the consequences of your software than just writing the code. This is the biggest learning for me. And after that, from there on, my journey moved into very unfamiliar territories, where I worked in industries where I never dreamt of working, like BFSI, healthcare, manufacturing, aviation. You talk about telecom a little bit. So these are areas where I never thought I would go and work, right? I have no idea about these businesses, but I managed to learn and stay curious and learn it. Each of these phases, each of these shifts into different workplace where I worked in these different industries, gave me a different type of learnings. It actually taught me some learnings in my life. Like, for example, HTC taught me about the software engineering discipline. And in Accenture, I got to know about the architecture and responsibility. Nucleus, where the Citibank, where I was part of the major EU transformation program. There again, it was more like what should I say? The design thinking and precision is something where I learned. And the places like GE, right, where the scalability and governance was taught, and where we have business, leadership concerns, where we have, where I have learned a lot of leadership lessons. Bank of America and TPF is the place where I started knowing about growth in leadership. And here again, I am in M&A leading the mergers and acquisitions. It's a full round cycle of business. All throughout this phase, I realized, looking at now, what stayed constant with me is I was always like, never get too comfortable. Being comfortable is like a quiet killer of curiosity. If you're too comfortable in some place, it kind of kills the curiosity. So it's been a wonderful journey. If I have to sum it up, curiosity started it, and I would say growth is what keeping me going, right? I'm in the process of a big, long journey.
Giri, that was such an honest and gripping walkthrough of your journey, and the way you carried us from those early days to the boardroom lenses, it felt incredibly real, And your reflection, especially the way you navigated those tough phases, brought a very human depth to the conversation.
Thank you.
So continuing it, you have led several major digital transformation projects, particularly with cloud platforms like AWS and GCP. So what's been the most challenging part of migrating legacy systems to cloud environments? And how do you ensure that companies can adapt without disrupting their day-to-day operations?
Okay, so sorry, let me just take you into some moments where I've been through this cloud migration. Um, it's actually like the cloud migration is a simple coin word, but there are multiple strategies that's being followed, right? Whether we talk about lift and shift or we talk about re-architecting. So we were supporting a big financial services client, when we were in the final stages of moving one of the, identity and access management module. This is the core piece of the overall migration. Basically, identity and access management is more like a login, right? When customers or users log in, it validates the credentials and gets their respective entitlements and so on. So we were migrating that from the on-prem to the hybrid model. Some pieces of it were into the cloud. So when the actual cutover was happening, we saw that, though it did not break, we saw for some of the users, some percentage of users, this was actually bringing down. I mean, they were timing out. It was more like a session expiry. It was asking them to log in again for few percentage of users. We were kind of worried. So it's not fire all around, but there is some amount of friction. Obviously, the business won't like it. They wanted things to be working fine, right? And ops teams were very curious that is this behavior going to creep up and have more number of users coming into this? So everything was going on, and so here is where the leadership comes in. We had to take some tough calls. Sometimes such, the cloud migrations will bring you into a position where you have to take some uncomfortable decisions. So in this case, for example, there was a decision that we are staring at. Should we even keep this migration moving along, or should we pause this or delay this by a week or so that we find the core issue and fix it? So technically speaking, this is working. Probably 95% of users were going through without any problems. The 5% of users randomly were having these issues. So technically, you could actually move on. But ethically, when you talk about IAM, in identity and access management, the login, that's the first particular experience the customers or the users will face. And if we start failing there, we will be breaking the trust and breaking the confidence, the customer confidence. So we had to make some ethical decision, and we said, okay, let's not do this. Let's not take the risk there. There's some amount of risk analysis as well. If it creeps in further, it is going to create more problems. So we kind of decided that, okay, let's stall this deployment for now, and we'll move it to the next cutover. And then we started our analysis. We found out that as part of the migration, there was an undocumented issue in the token refreshing logic in the legacy platform. Since it was on-prem so long, it was working fine. There were some edge cases that was not documented, and that actually created the issue. So suddenly everybody started worrying. I'm talking about the team. They're saying, okay, look, you know what? How could we miss this? We missed this. Are we going to be blamed for this? Is there something, do I have to, say, am I going to be penalized for this? So how do I fix this? That's where the issue is. The problem was that we had to move to the next cutover, and when we do the actual analysis, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. The team worked day and night, and finally they fixed it. And that's a kind of moment that taught me a big leadership lessons that you have to stay patient, and you have to weather the storm and soak the pressure, and the team should feel safe. That's when the team will be motivated to fix it. So they did fix it, and we managed to go to the next cutover cycle. It was moving along, cruising along pretty well. So for me, the biggest thing in cloud migration, I would say, is there are basically three major buckets of resistance, I would say. We'll talk about that. I would say it's more of a fear, and then the people, and then the culture, right? So from a fear perspective, people don't want to change the behavior. I mean, they were used to the legacy approach and it was working fine. Why change it, right? That's a kind of approach people typically take. Second is people are used to certain behaviors. Legacy, even though it has certain issues, people were comfortable with it and they would actually go with that, right? The user behavior for the 10, 15 years, they would have built it. So that behavior nobody wants to change. And the third part is the most aspect of it. I would say some part of it is also a fear aspect of it. Will this new migration, will it make me irrelevant in the company? For example, in GE, when we tried to move from the on-prem workspace to a Google workspace for all the working emails and documents and everything, some of the people who are managing the on-prem email servers and SharePoint servers and blah, 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 all of them suddenly felt, okay, are my skills irrelevant now? We are moving to cloud. So we have to educate people and move them through the phase. So for me, fear, people, culture are the biggest challenge than technology on its own. And finally, when we talk about how organizations can do this without or minimal disruptions of their day-to-day operations, at the end of the day, business doesn't care whether you're using cloud or you're using on-prem solution. Nobody cares. They want business continuity. Business and the customers, they always want business continuity. So whatever we build, right, we have to ensure that business continuity engineering is taken into picture. And that means whatever we are migrating, it has to be done in an orchestrated manner, in a more staggered orchestrated manner, more like canary releases and understanding the quiet phases, moving the less critical pieces first, and then the large pieces are most critical pieces eventually. Those kind of strategies have to be followed. Bottom line is we have to plan it. It's all about the transformation is migration and transformation is all about planning. Technology is just 20 to 30%. And psychology, I would say, is about the remaining 80%. So to me, that's the way organizations can actually do it. To put it simply, Sunny, the way migrations are, like if the business feel less pain, that means the migration is successful and the transformation is successful. And if they don't see any change, it's wonderful.
Rightly said, Mr. Giri, and that was such an eye-opening breakdown of what really happens behind the scenes. The way you connected the chaos, the cultural shift, and the final breakthrough made it feel incredibly real.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Giri, you have also been deeply involved in mergers and acquisitions, managing the entire life cycle from sourcing and valuation to post-merger integration. So from your experience, what's the key to ensuring smooth integration during M&A, especially in the technology sector? And part B of my question is, could you share an example where you navigated a particularly complex post-merger integration?
Of course, Sunny, let me give you the real moment that you asked for with an example, right, from the acquisition that we made recently. Acquisition really taught me in terms of what really integration means, right? So we were finalizing one of our acquisitions about a fintech company. They have a very good, very solid product line, and very solid customer base, and good revenues coming in. The people were passionate, and all that. So when we were about to sign the sale purchase agreement, at that time, the CEO of the company, he just asked us a question in a meeting where we were talking about different things. He said, if we become part of your group, the Constellation or the TSI group, what changes for us right on day one? Could you just walk us through? So he wasn't talking about technology. He wasn't talking about what markets and so on. He was actually talking about the operating philosophy. How are you going to treat? So this shows, that kind of opened me up, and they said this question is not just about how are we going to work. It is about their identity, their pace, and the autonomy that they were living with in the previous world. And post acquisition, how is this going to work out? So there was this kind of a question that happens in everybody's mind. Most people think M&A is about finance, contract, and migration, integrating products. But the real integration, the make or break part, it actually happens in the human layer, right? About the people. Everybody wants to be part of the shared dream, right, or the shared vision. So in technology acquisition, in my opinion, the biggest friction point, they're not technical. They are primarily fear, cultural collision. So when we say fear, quoting the same example in one of that acquisition, the question was more towards, will our way of working disappear? Will my roadmap survive? I have the autonomy to do whatever that I want to do in my company. Now, would that go off because of the governance that is coming in from an acquirer, so from the new parent? So all this is kind of leading towards the identity. There is a fear among people that, am I going to lose my identity? Am I going to lose what I'm valued for? Number two is the cultural collision. That is, you know, the companies that we usually acquire, they come with their own pace, they come with their own rhythm. Companies being small, they are always nimble and they quickly react to decisions and situations, right? Taking quick decisions. There is very casual way of governing the business and managing the product and so on. But when it comes to the corporate world, you have to have the strong governance and disciplined reporting and staged allocation of capital and so on and so forth. So this is, there's nothing to say neither one is right or wrong, but these are different styles, right? When we do the integration, this cultural collision plays a very critical role in forming the success of the business, right? So the most important thing that I have learned is people usually resist integration because they have a fear that they're going to lose their identity. So before we touched on any single system or process, we focused on conversations behind the scenes to call them up, to talk to their leadership, talk to the people, to understand what are they afraid of losing. We are not here to erase something that we bought you for, right? So we bought the company because of its core identity, and we don't want to erase that. So that's a kind of comfort that that we had to do. So the human layer is the biggest challenge. And from a leadership perspective, we also have to take some calls. When we acquire, as I said, they come with their own rhythm, they come with their own tech stacks, and they come with their own roadmaps. So we had to take some calls in terms of how are we going to govern this? Are we going to allow them to focus on growth areas and things like that? So there has to be some tough calls that has to be made. But at the end of the day, we try to maintain a principle of autonomy stays. We have to strengthen it by governance, and financial discipline forms the backbone of our operations. So this is the kind of principle that we always drive it with the new onboarded company. So a mentor once told me that integration is not a race to cross the finish line. Acquisition integration is not a race to cross the finish line, but it is a sequence. So how do you sequence it? Makes a big difference. You need to first align the values, then you align the governance, then you align the finance, and then touch the operating model and the systems. So that's how the integration becomes successful. So coming back to this story that I was sharing with, not every integration is great. When you start and you acquire, it goes really well. With this integration, we had a very, very difficult moment, a dip moment. Soon after the acquisition, we saw the numbers, the EBITDAs were going down negative, not because the business is bad, but we realized when we go deeper into the analysis that the delivery teams were overcommitting to clients, collections were delayed, and pricing was not aligned to the customers, and travel costs and all other spends are not under control. So cost allocation was unclear, and so on and so forth. So it is something that we got to fix. And when we start having the discussions about how do we fix it, the acquired company, they felt that we are kind of interfering too much, and we had to protect the investment, and we had to get involved with them, have a transparent conversation with them. And the most important aspect here is, from an acquirer's perspective, it's easy to push the envelope directly to the new business and tell them to do what we say, but that is going to create more frustration. The best thing that we did was we called for a meeting, and we talked about, we reset the expectations. Both sides listened, and both sides tried to understand what we were trying to say and what we were trying to achieve, and that saved the integration. And we crafted some action plans. For example, customer profitability report. Start looking at customers who are paying you the most, and deploy your resources for high-paying customers. And any unpaid customer efforts have to be stopped, and put controls on your expenditures, and see how you can make your commitments by looking at your capacity rather than overcommitting the timelines. So we put some of these measures, and what happens eventually down the line, a couple of months later, the EBITDA starts moving towards the positive trend. So the business is happy, and the team is happy, and the frustration is gone, and now they feel they're part of the shared vision and they want to grow more. So what excites people typically is the shared vision, right? When in all M&As, if I have to just summarize, Sunny, acquisitions, they succeed when people, they feel respected, when the culture is understood, and when their identity is preserved and respected. So but people must feel that, they're part of the shared future, right? If the culture is not understood and the identity is not respected from both sides, it is going to be a difficult path. So for the essence, for the smooth integration, I feel people should be more, they should feel respected, and the culture should be understood, and the identity should be preserved.
Absolutely, Mr. Giri. That was incredibly insightful. And the way you unpack the human side of integration, the tensions, the turning points, and the breakthroughs gave such a clear picture of what really happens behind closed doors.
Yep. Thank you.
So, Mr. Giri, you have helped companies drive efficiency by implementing systems like ERP, reducing operational costs, and
Yep.
enhancing service delivery. Now, how
Yep.
do you manage to keep teams motivated during these transformation projects, especially when dealing with big changes like system overhauls and new technology integrations?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very tough challenge, I must say, because I'll walk you through, Sunny, to one of the very complex migration, the ERP, the global delivery model migration that we did in GE. The whole thing is the transformation project. When it was sold as a concept, everybody kind of said it's a wow moment. You have a lot of systems in a company like GE. We talk about power conversion. There are units all across Europe and US and so on. There are multiple ERPs, product lifecycle management systems, enterprise planning tools, and sourcing systems, and so on and so forth. Now, we need to create a global delivery model, means it's all integrated. That's the first challenge. The second is the practices and the regulatory norms and the process discipline and the manufacturing norms are all different and across different units. So the key to any transformation is you have to earn the emotional transformation. That's what I say. When we kickstarted the project, everybody was excited. But sooner or later, during the review meetings, one of the review meetings, it was given to understand that one of the units, the German units, they were not very happy about what was happening. In fact, one of the operations leader, he mentioned that all this is good in the diagrams and flows and PowerPoints and charts, but in reality, I don't think this is going to work out. Now, that's a wake-up moment for me, right? It is not because of technology people are fearing. It is because people feel that, they feel overwhelmed and they're disconnected from the purpose. Why are we doing it? That's what I understood. So I sat down quietly with them, with him and his team, of course. We wanted to understand and what was actually the problem. Now, he explained to me saying, Giri, the system looks good, but the team needs a predictable workflows. If that breaks, my production flow will break. So he wasn't resisting the ERP. That's what I understood. He was actually protecting the business. He has a fear that if he's going to go through this transformation, it's going to create chaos. So instead of telling him about architectures, workflow models, integrations, and blah, 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 I told him about the outcomes. I said, look, if you go through this process and we do this, you will get real-time visibility of your component shortages. You don't have to follow up with the sourcing and the procurement for updates. Your capacity planning becomes much easier because you already know, you have the visibility from the Salesforce automation about what are the incoming flows, and you already have your capacity plan worked out, so you should be able to get a better deal. So when he realized the system was removing the migration, the global delivery model is actually to remove the friction from his day rather than not adding to it, he kind of understood, and he became a part of part of the solution. And in fact, I should say that down the line, he was one of the champions for us. He was more of a catalyst for change, transformation catalyst. So motivation, I feel motivation really starts when people see themselves as part of the change rather than when they are asked to change. So it's not about the business, it's not about the CIO, it's not about the vendor, it's about the people who actually do the job, and they feel they're part of the change. They will make it easy for you. Like with every other business, we also had a tough moment in this transformation. There were some integrations that were breaking out. We were not able to successfully integrate certain Salesforce automation into the ERP. So again, the team from different European countries, they started saying that we had to stop this global delivery model rollout. But the team was almost there and they were close, and they could not, because of these integrations, they don't want to lose down heavily. They felt they're really frustrated, and we had to motivate the team. To motivate the team in this situation, after all the excitement, when the middle of something's breaking down, the real challenge from a leadership perspective is you take the bullet. That means you have to talk to the concerned teams directly and understand what they are looking for. So we introduced certain mechanisms. I call this as wins and blockers startup meeting. It's more like a 10-minute topic. I just go into them and then they say that, okay, tell me what worked for you, what it didn't work for you, what is blocking you to do in doing your job, and what do you expect. So it's basically the 4 quadrant types, right? So that helped people to get the momentum. And then there is a visible scorecard that we try to build to say that what is working more from an outcome rather than from a metric. We are not here to say how many defects are there, how many we closed. Instead, we said, what is the latency period that is improved for a login screen? How quickly can you do the purchase order? How quickly can you create the purchase order? So these sort of outcome-oriented metrics, as we started publishing, that created some insights. And then most importantly, which is one of my favorite, I started rotating the developers into different roles. That means I made them to pair with some of the operations team guys who they'll go and sit with them and understand how they create the purchase order, what problems they go through in the new system after the integration, what challenges they face, why they are angry about it or not happy about it, what is breaking there, and how can we fix it. This gave the developers the insight what mistakes they were doing. Trust me, it is not, you cannot learn that in any sort of workflow discussions or any sort of requirements gathering discussions. This is like on the job. People learn from what they see as a failure, right? What actually failed. So we did fix all those issues, and finally the global delivery model starts moving, and we managed to integrate a lot of work. With all this, what I really felt was this transformation and migrating this, the motivation for the people is people feel motivated only under two circumstances. I'll say it as a 2 points. Point number one is if you are actually feeling you are never heard of, that means nobody's there to listen to you, then they don't feel motivated and they go down. Number two is there is some amount of fear that is there in their mind. Am I going to be blamed? So they should feel safe even under the uncertain situation. Only then the team will be feeling very safe under the leadership, and they would want to back you and they want to support you. So that would be my transformation story. That would be my mantra for motivating the people.
Mr. Giri, hearing the human side behind an ERP rollout really reframes what transformation really means.
Yep, of course, it's more human. Yep.
Absolutely. All right. So, Mr. Giri, now we are going to switch things up with a rapid fire round. Quick questions, short answers, and let's see how you handle the heat. So, are you ready? Are you up for it?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So here's my first question to you. What's the first thing you do when you wake up?
Check my phone and pretend as though I don't check my phone.
All right. Your go-to comfort food after a long day?
It's a home-cooked food any day that relaxes you.
Okay. One hobby that instantly relaxes you.
Listening to Tamil melodies, and Ilayaraja is my favorite all time, and anytime listening to him.
Good choice. If you could instantly master one skill, what would it be?
Well, I am a drummer, I'm a percussionist, but I always wanted to be a guitarist, Sunny. And nobody, people laughed at me when I actually picked the guitar. But I'm a good drummer and I was a percussionist and I'm a trained musician that way. I wanted to master being a guitarist.
Wow. Okay. A book that changed the way you think.
There are multiple books, starting from Seven Habits, then to Who Moved My Cheese, and so on and so forth. Professionally, there are a lot of books. I would say these two are main. And then Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. These are books. But personally, I would say Ikigai. Ikigai is a very self-introspective moment for me.
Absolutely. Next question, your favorite way to spend a weekend?
Long drives. I like driving around.
All right. If you could meet any historical figure, who would it be?
Well, no doubt, I'm a great fan of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, our former president of India, and I'm amazed by the humility at his peak intelligence. These two are very rare combo, and I definitely want to meet him for that.
Great. If you could live in any city for a year, where would it be?
No further thinking. I would say Tokyo, because I feel it's modern, it's organized, and even there, the chaos is more of organized. That's what I feel. I feel Tokyo.
Okay. What's one thing on your bucket list that you still want to check off?
Bucket list. Okay. I wanted to drive. Like I said, I like driving. I want to drive around the southern peninsula of India on the coastal line.
All right. And the last question of the rapid fire round, if you could give one piece of advice to the next generation of leaders, what would it be?
Well, okay. I hate giving advices, but let me give that. Stay curious, because for me, curiosity is what is very important. Stay curious, be humble, and then most importantly, don't chase perfection, chase progress. Because if you try to chase perfection, you will not be at peace.
That was fun and awesome, Mr. Giri. And thanks for sharing those quick insights and giving us a little peek into your personality.
Okay. Thank you.
So let's talk about the challenges that the industry faces, and let's talk about something that's becoming more important than ever: governance and ethics. In today's business landscape, where transparency and integrity are critical, we see both great innovation and, unfortunately, some ethical challenges. So,
Yes,
in recent years, the tech industry, especially in areas like fintech and data security, has faced several high-profile scams, from data breaches to fraudulent financial reporting. Has there been a specific incident or scam in the tech or financial services industry that you have witnessed or have to navigate through? And how did you handle it? And what lessons did it teach you about leadership and ethics?
absolutely. Yeah, it is very important. I think with a lot of tech innovation, this becomes a very, very highly critical topic, I would say. Yes, of course, Sunny, there was one incident, but I was not leading that and I was not managing that. I witnessed something happening from the close quarters, so I could unfold that story and I could tell you what really happened. It is actually something very quiet and very subtle. I learned a lot about ethical leadership there during that incident. So we were again talking about the financial services contact center platform. So the analytics team from the financial services contact center platform, they did the call disposition system, which is typically the call center agents. The agent delivery system will actually go and update the CRM about the call record history and everything, the status and everything. So they did analyze it. They found there's something really weird there. That means there is a sequence of certain events, like for example, for certain calls, it was tagged as, every call is usually tagged as resolved, pending, escalations, and so on and so forth. Those calls were tagged as resolved at first contact. Usually resolved at first contact in contact center business has as a value in incentives and other things. So we saw there's some amount of calls were actually tagged as resolved at first contact. Now, at the outset, it looked really weird, but when we start looking at the timestamps, it were very close to the batches that were running at the end of the day. And the calls were not scheduled to the agents, and the timing of update, the status update was also very weird. The timestamps were very too close to do it manually. There's something fishy, so there was a team was brought in, and then the team was started investigating the situation. And as I said, I watched this from a close quarter, so I looked at it from the data perspective. So we saw that the actual issue was someone who used the service ID to update the CRM database from the backend, not through the agent solution, through the backend. They tried to update the call status as they tagged it as resolved at first contact. Now, this is not very big scandal. No stealing happened, no stealing of customer data happened, but the customer interaction data is distorted now, right? We were trying to understand the motive behind this. The question is not who has done it. That's, of course, a very simple question. The question is what made people to do it. That was the question the leader who was leading that was asking towards. And that opened my eyes. The typical approach would be to who did it and take some actions, corrective actions, and so on. But the leader, he actually went towards, what made them to do it. Then we realized it is due to the KPIs pressure and SLA pressures, incentives and target pressures. Someone was doing this. So, of course, the fallout was we found the person and all that. There again, there was a leadership moment to talk about what should we do. There are two options here. One is to transparently report this to the customer and explain this and take corrective measures and so on. The other one is quickly warn the person internally, handle this internally, more like an internal. There were two school of thoughts that was happening, but I was fortunate to witness that because the leadership there took a very right ethical decision of informing the customer. Because I still remember the day they told me this word, right? And I listened to this word, the sentence. They said that if we say, okay, and if we move on this issue, we are saying KPI has more value than integrity, which is like a eye-opener for me, right? Of course, KPIs are important, but not at the cost of integrity, right? So they said, okay, we cannot do this. So let's go back, and the audit started, and then they informed the customer. The person was taken into HR. The HR action followed. There's a whole 9 yards of things that has to happen, but we have to go through the pain, to do this. Now, this moment gave me an eye opener in the ethical leadership to say that, look, even in subtle circumstances, the impact is not big. The impact is subtle. As I said, there's no stealing, there's no financial scandal, big scandal or anything. To accept the uncomfortable truth and go through the pain rather than, sweeping it under the carpet and assuming that no one is noticing us, this is a big leadership lesson for me. I would say that day that I learned that ethical leadership is about observing, capturing, and fixing those deviances, right, which are normalized, and sooner or later that's part of the culture. In fact, the leader actually mentioned that if we allow this to happen, this will be part of the culture. So we don't want that, and we have to take this and deal it. So this is a big leadership lesson, an ethical leadership lesson for me.
Absolutely, Mr. Giri, and that was incredibly grounding. And the way you walk us through the tension, the choices, and the personal weight behind them really brings the ethical dimension of tech to life.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great, incredible. All right, so Mr. Giri, you have had the chance to interface with boards and lead governance-focused initiatives throughout your career.
Yep.
Can you share how joining Directors Institute has shaped your understanding of leadership and governance, particularly at the board level? And what drew you to the Institute, and how has it influenced your approach to decision-making and ethical leadership?
Absolutely. Like I mentioned in my opening statement, in the last 3 decades, my career has taken me through some of the most demanding and transformative parts of technology landscape, I should say. From systems engineering, a small systems programmer in the mid-90s, into leading enterprise modernizations, global transformation programs, full cycle M&A integrations, and so on and so forth. And in every chapter, I feel my responsibilities have grown larger, the decisions more consequential, and the need for structured ethical governance, governance-driven leadership has become more absolutely critical, in my opinion. So, as M&A leader of a TSI group, now that we are going through the deep transformative process under the Constellation ecosystem, I'm responsible not just for operational excellence, but for shaping up the future of acquired businesses. I oversee P&L, integration strategy, technology modernizations, and all these, right? And these responsibilities have made one thing very clear. Leadership at this level is no longer about operational problem solving. It's about governance, risk posture, and long-range judgment and principled decision making based on the value system that we define. So the transition from senior operational roles into board-aligned decision spaces demands a very different altitude of thinking, in my opinion. In boardrooms, the questions are not about how we execute this, but why the system behaves this way, why it behaves this way, and what risks are we blinded to, and how do we safeguard the long-term value of some of the assets that we are doing, that we have. And I realized to contribute to that meaningfully at that level, I must evolve from operational leadership to a more of a governance leadership, which I call it. So this is what drew me actually into the Directors Institute, where we have a program about international corporate directorship program. It's a structured global framework for board governance, risk oversight, ethical leadership, financial stewardship, stakeholder alignment, the crisis resilience. To me, I'm more curious, and I wanted to understand more about, how independent directors shape the culture, how boards prevent systemic failures, how ethical leadership is preserved in a commercial pressure situation, and how long-term strategies protected in a volatile market cycle, in a spiked market cycle that we have today. So I believe this program will definitely not only expand my governance and compliance, but strengthen my ability to bring calm and principle-driven judgment. So my goal is to contribute to the boards where technology, strategy, ethics, and operational excellence and intersect, particularly the industries where being shaped by AI, cloud modernization, and digital finance. So I don't see this particular learning as a credential. This is more of a disciplined journey where I want to move from operational leadership to a governance-driven leadership, to the next decade of leadership, I should say. So, and I look forward to continue contributing my experience, learning with it, and then completing the program and building the governance capabilities needed for the meaningful board impact. So that's what I was looking for primarily from this program.
Mr. Giri, that was incredibly insightful, and the way you described the shift from operational instinct to governance clarity really shows what boardroom leadership demands.
Yep, thank you. Yes, of course.
So let me tell you, Mr. Giri, what an incredible conversation this has been. And thank you so much for sharing your journey, your insights into leadership, governance, and the importance of ethical decision-making in today's fast-paced world. It's clear that your experience and values have shaped the way you lead. And that's something we can all learn from.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sunny. Thank you for that.
And to everyone tuning in, I hope today's episode has given you not just a glimpse into Giri's impressive career, but also valuable lessons on navigating the challenges of leadership with integrity. So I'm your host, Sunny Pancholi, and this has been another great episode of FaceTime with Leaders, powered by Directors Institute, World Council of Directors. Thanks again for listening, and remember, real leadership isn't just about getting results. It's about doing it the right way. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and as I always say, lead with integrity. Thank you so much.